Your mind is lying to you. Wake up. Written by MindForge Audiobooks. Introduction. You trust your thoughts. Every decision you make, every action you take, starts with something your mind tells you. It feels natural to believe that your thinking is accurate, that you know what you're doing. But what if that isn't true? What if your mind is not showing you reality, but a version of it? This is the dangerous illusion, the belief that I know what I'm doing. Because most of the time, you don't question your thoughts. You accept them. You follow them. And that's exactly where the problem begins. Your brain is not designed to show you the truth. It is designed to protect you, to keep you safe, to reduce effort, to avoid discomfort. And to do that, it simplifies reality. It uses shortcuts. It fills in gaps. It creates quick conclusions. But those shortcuts often distort what's real. You don't see things as they are. You see them as your mind interprets them. And the most surprising part? The smarter you are, the easier it is to be misled by your own thinking. Because you can justify your thoughts. You can create convincing explanations. You can defend your beliefs, even when they're wrong. Your intelligence doesn't always protect you. Sometimes, it strengthens the illusion. This is why believing every thought is dangerous, because not every thought is true. Some are based on fear. Some are based on past experiences. Some are based on assumptions. But if you don't question them, they control you. They shape your decisions. They limit your actions. They define your reality. And over time, this creates a life based on patterns you never chose consciously. In this audiobook, you will uncover how your mind tricks you, how your thoughts can mislead you, and how to separate reality from mental illusion. Because once you see how your mind works, you stop being controlled by it. Chapter 1. Your brain is built to trick you. Your brain is powerful. It helps you think, decide, and survive. But it is not designed to show you the truth. It is designed to keep you alive. This is the most important shift to understand. Your brain prioritizes survival over accuracy. It cares more about keeping you safe than helping you see reality clearly. And because of that, it uses shortcuts. These shortcuts are fast, efficient, and automatic, but they are not always correct. To understand this, you need to see the difference between two systems, the survival brain and the truth-seeking mind. The survival brain is ancient. It developed to protect you from danger. It reacts quickly. It avoids risk. It looks for threats. It does not take time to analyze everything. Because in a dangerous situation, speed matters more than accuracy. If you see something that looks like a threat, your brain reacts immediately. It does not wait to confirm. Because waiting could be dangerous. This system helped humans survive. But in modern life, most of the threats you face are not physical. They are psychological. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of uncertainty. But your brain treats them similarly. It reacts. It tries to protect you, even when there is no real danger. This is where distortion begins, because your brain is not asking, what is true? It is asking, what is safe? And those are not always the same. For example, trying something new may be safe, but it feels risky. So your brain signals fear, not because it is dangerous, but because it is unfamiliar. This is why your brain cares about safety, not accuracy. It would rather keep you in a familiar situation than risk something uncertain. Even if that uncertainty leads to growth, this creates a conflict between what is safe and what is possible. And if you are not aware of this, your brain will keep choosing safety. Again and again. This is how it limits you. Another reason your brain tricks you is through mental shortcuts. These are automatic patterns of thinking. They help you process information quickly, but they simplify reality. They remove detail. They create assumptions. For example, you see a situation once and your brain forms a conclusion. Then it uses that conclusion in future situations, without fully analyzing them. This saves effort, but it also creates bias. You start seeing patterns that may not be accurate. You make quick judgments. You assume outcomes. And over time, these shortcuts shape your perception. You don't see things as they are. You see them as your brain expects them to be. This is why two people can experience the same situation differently, because their brains interpret it differently, based on past experiences, beliefs, and patterns. And most of the time, you don't question this. You trust your interpretation. You believe your thoughts. But your thoughts are not always accurate. They are influenced by shortcuts, by assumptions, by past experiences. This is how your brain distorts reality. Another important aspect is protection. Your brain is constantly trying to protect you from discomfort, from failure, from uncertainty. And to do that, it creates thoughts. Thoughts that justify staying where you are. Thoughts that encourage you to avoid risk. For example, I'm not ready. This is too risky. Now is not the right time. These thoughts feel logical. They feel reasonable, but often they are protective. They are not based on truth. They are based on comfort. Your brain is trying to keep you in a safe zone, but that safe zone becomes a limitation because growth happens outside of it. This is the paradox. The same system that protects you also holds you back. Your brain is doing its job, but its job is not aligned with your goals. It wants safety. You want progress. And progress requires stepping into uncertainty. This is why awareness is critical. You need to recognize when your brain is protecting you and when it is limiting you. The next time you feel hesitation, pause. Ask yourself, is this actually dangerous or just uncomfortable? Most of the time it is discomfort, not danger, and that changes how you respond, because discomfort is not something to avoid, it is something to move through. Another important step is questioning your thoughts. Not every thought is true. Not every thought is useful. When a thought appears, ask, is this helping me or holding me back? This creates awareness. It breaks automatic thinking. It gives you control. Because now you are not blindly following your mind. You are evaluating it. Over time, this changes your thinking. You become less reactive, less controlled by fear, more aware of patterns. You begin to see your brain differently, not as a perfect guide, but as a system with limitations, a system that needs direction. Because your brain will always use shortcuts. It will always try to protect you. That will not change. But now you understand it. And that understanding gives you power. Because instead of being controlled by your mind, you start guiding it. You choose when to follow your thoughts and when to question them. You recognize the difference between safety and growth, and you act accordingly. This is how you break the illusion. Because your brain may be built to trick you, but you are not built to be controlled by it. You are built to become aware. And once you are aware, everything begins to change. Chapter 2. Thoughts are not facts. Every day, thousands of thoughts pass through your mind. Some are useful, some are neutral, and many are misleading. But here's the problem. You treat them all as true. You don't question them. You don't examine them. You simply believe them. And that belief shapes your actions. This is why understanding one principle can change everything. Thoughts are not facts. They feel real. They sound convincing. But they are not always accurate. Your mind produces thoughts automatically. It does not check for truth. It generates possibilities. And often your first thought is not the most accurate one. It is the fastest one. It is based on habit, on past experiences, on emotions, on assumptions. For example, you face a challenge, and your first thought is, this is too difficult, or I'm not ready. These thoughts feel immediate. They feel certain. But they are not necessarily true. They are reactions, and reactions are not always reliable. This is why your first thought is often wrong, because it is not based on careful analysis. It is based on automatic processing. Your brain is trying to be efficient. It wants to respond quickly, so it uses patterns. It predicts outcomes. It jumps to conclusions. But speed comes at a cost. Accuracy is reduced. And if you don't question these thoughts, They control your behavior. You hesitate. You avoid. You hold back. Not because of reality, but because of interpretation. This brings us to an important distinction: the difference between thinking and truth. Thinking is a process. Truth is reality. Your thoughts are interpretations of reality, not reality itself. But your mind often treats them as the same. If you think something, it feels true. If you believe something, it feels certain. But feeling does not equal fact. For example, you may think, "I will fail." That thought creates emotion, fear, doubt, hesitation. But that does not mean failure is guaranteed. It is just a possibility, and often not even a likely one. This confusion between thought and truth creates limitation. You act based on what you think, instead of what is real, and over time, this shapes your life. Another powerful factor is automatic negative thoughts. These are thoughts that appear instantly, without effort. They are often critical, fearful, or limiting. "I'm not good enough. This won't work. I always mess things up." These thoughts are common, and they are automatic. They come from patterns your brain has learned over time. If you have experienced failure, your brain remembers it. If you have felt doubt, your brain stores it. And when similar situations appear, your brain repeats those patterns. It tries to protect you, but it ends up limiting you, because negative thoughts are not neutral. They influence your emotions. They affect your confidence. They shape your decisions. And if you believe them, they become your reality. But here's the key: just because a thought appears does not mean it is true. It is just a mental event. It is something your brain produced, and you have a choice: to believe it or to observe it. This is one of the most powerful skills you can develop: observing your thoughts instead of believing them. Most people are inside their thoughts. They identify with them. They become them. But when you observe your thoughts, you create distance. You see the thought, but you don't follow it automatically. You recognize it. You question it. You evaluate it. For example, instead of thinking, "I will fail," and believing it, you observe, "I'm having the thought that I might fail." This small shift is powerful, because now you are not controlled by the thought. You are aware of it, and awareness gives you choice. You can ask, "Is this thought based on evidence? Is it helpful? Is it accurate?" Often, the answer is no, and that changes how you respond. You don't ignore the thought, but you don't let it control you. You see it for what it is: a possibility, not a fact. Over time, this changes your thinking. You become less reactive, less influenced by automatic thoughts, more aware of patterns, and more intentional in your actions. This reduces anxiety, because you are no longer reacting to every thought. You are filtering them. You are choosing which ones to follow, and which ones to let go. Another important step is replacing unhelpful thoughts, not with unrealistic positivity, but with balanced thinking. Instead of, "I can't do this," you say, "This is challenging, but I can try." Instead of, "This will fail," you say, "I don't know the outcome, but I can take action." These shifts are realistic. They support movement, they reduce fear, and they improve decision-making, because your thinking becomes aligned with reality, not distortion. In the end, your thoughts are powerful, but only if you believe them without question. Once you begin to observe them, their power decreases. You realize that your mind is not always accurate, that your first thought is not always right, that your thinking is not always truth. And that realization changes everything, because now you are not controlled by your thoughts. You are guiding them. You are choosing your response, and that is where real control begins. Chapter 3. Fear creates false reality. Fear is one of the most powerful forces in your mind. It is fast, it is intense, and it feels real. But here is the truth: most people never question. Fear does not always reflect reality. It often distorts it. Your brain is designed to detect danger, to protect you, to keep you safe. And to do that, it exaggerates threats. because from a survival perspective, it is better to overestimate danger than underestimate it. But in modern life, this creates a problem, because most of the danger you face is not physical, it is psychological. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of uncertainty, and your brain treats these fears as if they are real threats. This is how fear exaggerates danger. A small risk feels like a big one. A simple decision feels overwhelming. A normal challenge feels like a threat. For example, you think about trying something new. Your mind says, "What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if this goes wrong?" These thoughts create fear, and that fear feels real. But nothing has actually happened. This is where the distortion begins. Your mind is reacting to a possibility, not a reality. This leads to imagined problems. Problems that exist only in your thoughts. You create scenarios, worst-case outcomes, negative possibilities, and then you respond to them as if they are real. This is the difference between imagined problems and real problems. A real problem is happening now. It requires action. It is based on actual conditions. An imagined problem is a possibility. It may happen, but it may not. And most of the time it doesn't. But your brain does not always make that distinction. If something feels real, your body reacts. Your heart rate increases. Your focus narrows. Your mind becomes alert, even though the situation is not actually dangerous. This is why fear can control your behavior. You avoid opportunities. You delay decisions. You stay in your comfort zone. Not because of reality, but because of imagination. This creates anxiety. Anxiety is often not about what is happening. It is about what might happen. It is future-based thinking. You project yourself into the future. You imagine outcomes. You focus on negative possibilities, and your mind reacts. This is why anxiety feels so strong, because your brain treats imagined futures as if they are real. You think about failure and feel it. You imagine rejection and experience the emotion, even though none of it has happened. This is the power of fear-driven thinking. It creates a false reality, one where problems feel certain, even when they are not. This is why overthinking and fear are connected. The more you think about a negative outcome, the more real it feels. The more real it feels, the more you believe it, and the more you believe it, the more it controls your actions. This creates a cycle: fear, imagination, belief, avoidance, and this cycle keeps you stuck. Breaking this cycle requires awareness. You need to recognize when fear is influencing your thinking. When a thought appears, pause. Ask yourself, is this happening right now, or am I imagining it? This question separates reality from fear. Most of the time, you will realize it is imagined. Another important step is questioning the intensity of fear. Ask, how realistic is this outcome? What is the actual probability? Fear focuses on possibility, but you need to consider likelihood. Just because something can happen does not mean it will. This reduces exaggeration. It brings your thinking back to reality. Another powerful shift is focusing on what you can control. Fear grows when you focus on outcomes you cannot control. What will happen? What others will think? What might go wrong? But control exists in your actions, your effort, your response, your decision to move forward. When you shift your focus to action, fear loses power, because you are no longer stuck in imagination. You are engaging with reality. Action is one of the strongest ways to break fear, because action provides evidence. You see what actually happens, and often it is not as bad as you expected. This reduces fear over time, because your brain learns this is manageable. Another important step is accepting discomfort. Fear often signals discomfort, not danger. Trying something new feels uncomfortable. Speaking up feels uncomfortable. Taking a risk feels uncomfortable. But discomfort is part of growth. It is not something to avoid. It is something to move through. When you understand this, your relationship with fear changes. You stop seeing it as a stop signal and start seeing it as a challenge, a sign that you are stepping outside your comfort zone. And that is where growth happens. Over time, this changes your thinking. You become less reactive to fear, less controlled by imagined outcomes, more focused on real action. You begin to see fear differently, not as truth, but as a signal that needs to be examined, not blindly followed, because fear will always exist. That will not change, but how you respond to it can. You can let it control you, or you can question it. You can stay in imagined problems, or you can face reality. And when you choose reality over imagination, fear loses its power, because you are no longer living in what might happen. You are acting on what is happening, and that is where real control begins. Chapter 4. Your past is controlling you. You believe you are making decisions in the present, but in many cases, your past is making them for you. Your experiences, especially the emotional ones, don't just stay in memory. They shape how you think, how you react, and how you interpret new situations. This happens automatically. You don't choose it, you don't notice it, but it influences you. Old experiences become mental patterns. If you've failed before, your brain remembers that feeling. If you've been judged, your mind stores that discomfort. If something went wrong, your brain marks it as a warning. So when a similar situation appears, your brain reacts, not based on what is happening now, but based on what happened before. This is how old experiences shape current thinking. You are not always responding to the present. You are responding to a memory. For example, you face a new opportunity. Instead of seeing it clearly, your mind connects it to past failure. It says, "This didn't work before. This might go wrong again." And that thought feels real, even though the situation is different. This is how your past limits your present. Another powerful factor is emotional memory distortion. Your brain does not store memories perfectly. It does not replay events exactly as they happened. It reconstructs them. It highlights certain details. It ignores others. It adds emotion, and emotion strengthens memory. If something felt intense, fear, embarrassment, failure, your brain gives it more importance. It makes it feel bigger than it was, more significant, more meaningful, more permanent. This is why negative experiences often feel stronger than positive ones. Your brain is trying to protect you. It remembers what hurt, so you can avoid it. But this creates distortion. You don't remember events as they were. You remember how they felt, and that feeling shapes your current thinking. This leads to repeating the same mental patterns. You react the same way in similar situations. You think the same thoughts. You feel the same emotions. You make the same decisions, even when the situation is different. This is pattern repetition. Your brain is using past data to predict the future. It assumes what happened before will happen again, so it prepares you. But often, this assumption is wrong, because your current situation is not identical to your past. You have more knowledge, more experience, more awareness, but your brain does not always update that. It follows the pattern. And this keeps you stuck. You may avoid opportunities because of past fear. You may hesitate because of past failure. You may doubt yourself because of past experiences, not because you can't succeed, but because your mind is replaying an old script. Breaking this pattern requires awareness. You need to recognize when your reaction is coming from the past. When you feel hesitation, pause. Ask yourself, is this based on what is happening now or what happened before? This question creates separation. It helps you see the difference between memory and reality. Another important step is questioning the validity of your past. Just because something happened once does not mean it will happen again. Just because you failed before does not mean you will fail now. Your past is not a prediction. It is information, and information can be updated. You need to remind yourself, that was then. This is now. This shifts your thinking. It brings you back to the present. Another powerful way to break past-based reactions is through new experiences. You cannot change your patterns by thinking alone. You need action. When you act differently, you create new evidence. You show your brain that things can change, that the outcome is not fixed, that the pattern is not permanent. For example, if you avoid something because of past failure, try it again, even in a small way. When you experience a different result, your brain updates. It weakens the old pattern, and over time, the new pattern becomes stronger. This is how change happens. Not instantly, but gradually. Another important step is self-awareness. Notice your triggers. What situations make you react strongly? What thoughts appear automatically? These are signs of past influence. Once you recognize them, you can respond differently. Instead of reacting automatically, you pause, you choose. And that creates control. Over time, this changes your behavior. You become less controlled by your past, more guided by the present, more intentional in your actions, because you are no longer repeating old patterns blindly. You are creating new ones. Your past will always exist. It is part of you, but it does not have to control you. It can inform you without limiting you. And the moment you stop living through your past, you start creating your future. Chapter 5. Cognitive biases are running your life. You believe you see the world clearly, that your opinions are based on logic, that your decisions are rational, that your conclusions are accurate. But much of your thinking is influenced by something you rarely notice: cognitive biases. These are mental shortcuts your brain uses to make decisions quickly. They help you process information faster, but they also distort reality. Because instead of seeing things as they are, you see them through filters, and those filters shape everything: what you believe, what you notice, what you ignore. One of the most powerful biases is confirmation bias. This is your tendency to see what you already believe. Your brain looks for information that supports your existing beliefs, and it ignores information that contradicts them. For example, if you believe something will fail, you focus on signs of failure. If you believe someone is wrong, you notice their mistakes. If you believe you are not capable, you see evidence that confirms it. This creates a closed loop. You believe something. You look for evidence. You find it. Your belief becomes stronger, even if the belief is incorrect, because your brain is not searching for truth. It is searching for confirmation. This is why people can hold strong beliefs even when evidence exists against them, because they don't see the evidence. They filter it out. This is how confirmation bias limits your thinking. It prevents growth, because you only see what matches your current mindset. Another powerful bias is the overconfidence illusion. This is when you believe your understanding is more accurate than it actually is. You feel certain. You trust your judgment. You assume you are right, but confidence does not always equal accuracy. Your brain creates a sense of certainty. It builds a story. It connects information in a way that feels logical, and that feeling creates confidence. But that story may be incomplete. It may be based on limited information. It may ignore important details. Yet, because it feels right, you trust it. This is dangerous, because overconfidence reduces curiosity. You stop questioning. You stop learning. You stop checking your assumptions. You believe you already know, and that limits your growth. Another common bias is availability bias. This is your tendency to judge situations based on what comes to mind easily, usually recent or memorable events. If something happened recently, it feels more important. If something is vivid, it feels more likely. For example, if you hear about a negative event, you may overestimate how common it is. If you recently experienced failure, you may think failure is likely again. Your brain uses recent information as a shortcut because it is easier to recall. But ease of recall does not equal accuracy. Just because something is easy to remember does not mean it is common. This bias affects your decisions. It shapes your perception of risk. It influences how you evaluate situations. and often it leads to distorted conclusions. These biases exist because your brain prefers easy answers. Processing information accurately takes effort. It requires analysis. It requires attention. It requires time. But your brain wants efficiency, so it simplifies. It uses shortcuts. It makes quick judgments. This is helpful in some situations, but harmful in others, because easy answers are not always correct. They feel right, but they may not reflect reality. This is why your brain prefers easy answers over truth. Truth is complex. It requires questioning. It requires uncertainty. It requires openness. But your brain avoids that. It seeks certainty. It wants clarity, even if that clarity is based on incomplete information. This is why biases are so powerful. They operate automatically. You don't choose them. You don't notice them, but they influence your thinking. And if you are not aware of them, they control your decisions. Breaking free from biases starts with awareness. You need to recognize that your thinking is not always objective, that your perception is influenced, that your conclusions may not be complete. When you realize this, you begin to question your thoughts. Instead of assuming you are right, you ask, what might I be missing? Is there another perspective? Am I seeing this clearly? These questions create space. They reduce bias. They open your thinking. Another important step is seeking different viewpoints. If you only expose yourself to information that agrees with you, your bias becomes stronger. But when you consider different perspectives, your understanding improves. You see more. You think deeper. You become more accurate. You also need to slow down your thinking. Biases are strongest when you think quickly, when you react, when you decide without reflection. So when a decision matters, pause. Take time. Think carefully. This reduces the influence of shortcuts. It allows your thinking to become more deliberate. Over time, this changes your mindset. You become less certain, but more accurate, less reactive, but more thoughtful, less biased, but more aware. And that improves your decisions, because you are no longer seeing the world through automatic filters. You are seeing it more clearly. Your brain will always use shortcuts. That will not change. But now, you understand them, and that understanding gives you an advantage, because instead of being controlled by bias, you begin to see beyond it. And when you see clearly, you make better choices, and better choices lead to better results. Chapter 6. Emotions hijack your logic. You like to believe you are logical, that you think first, then decide. But in reality, it often works the other way around. You feel first, then you think. And most of your decisions are influenced by emotion before logic ever gets involved. This is one of the most important truths about your mind. Emotion comes before reasoning. Your brain is wired this way. It processes emotional signals faster than logical ones. So when something happens, your emotional system reacts immediately. You feel fear, excitement, anger, or anxiety before you even have time to think. This is why you sometimes act quickly and only later realize what you did, because your emotion made the decision and your logic came afterward. This leads to emotional decision-making. You believe you are making rational choices, but often you are just justifying what you already feel. For example, you feel fear about taking a risk. Then your mind creates logical reasons to avoid it. It's not the right time. I need more preparation. This might not work. These reasons sound logical, but they are often driven by emotion. Your brain is not deciding based on pure logic. It is defending a feeling. This happens in many areas of life. You feel uncomfortable, so you avoid. You feel excited, so you act quickly. You feel anxious, so you delay. And then your mind explains it in a way that feels rational. This is why logic often comes after action. Your brain creates a story, a narrative that makes your behavior seem reasonable, even if the decision was emotional. This is not a flaw. It is a function. Your brain is trying to maintain consistency. It wants your actions to make sense, so it builds explanations. But those explanations are not always accurate. They are interpretations, and if you are not aware of this, you may believe you are making logical decisions when you are actually following emotional impulses. This is where problems begin, because emotions are temporary. They change quickly. What you feel now may not be what you feel later. But decisions made in emotional states can have long-term consequences. You may say something in anger and regret it later. You may avoid an opportunity out of fear and miss growth. You may act impulsively and face the results later. This is why emotional control is essential. Not to eliminate emotion, but to manage it. You need to create space between emotion and response. This is the key skill, because in that space you regain control. When you feel something, pause. Don't act immediately. Give yourself time. Even a few seconds can make a difference. Because emotions are strongest in the moment. They push for immediate action. But when you pause, their intensity decreases. Your thinking becomes clearer. Your logic has time to catch up. This is how you shift from reacting to responding. A reaction is automatic. It is fast, impulsive, and emotional. A response is intentional. It is thoughtful, controlled, and deliberate. And that difference changes outcomes. To build this skill, you need awareness. You need to notice your emotional triggers. What situations cause strong reactions? What emotions do you feel most often? Fear, anger, anxiety? When you understand your patterns, you can prepare. You can recognize when emotion is rising. And instead of acting immediately, you pause. Another powerful technique is labeling the emotion. When you feel something, name it. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling afraid. This creates distance. You are no longer inside the emotion. You are observing it. An observation reduces intensity. It gives you control. Another important step is questioning the emotion. Ask yourself, is this feeling based on fact or interpretation? Is my reaction proportional to the situation? Often you will realize that the emotion is exaggerated, that the situation is not as serious as it feels, and this reduces impulsive behavior. You also need to accept that emotions are temporary. They rise, they peak, they fade. If you don't act on them immediately, they lose strength. This is why waiting is powerful. It allows the emotion to pass, and when it does, your thinking improves. Over time, this builds emotional discipline. You don't eliminate emotion, you guide it. You feel, but you don't react blindly. You observe, then decide. And this improves your decisions, because now your actions are based on clarity, not impulse. This is what separates average from elite thinking. Average thinking reacts emotionally. Elite thinking responds intentionally. Average thinking follows feelings. Elite thinking understands them, but does not follow them blindly. And this creates better outcomes, because your decisions become stable, consistent, aligned with your goals, not with temporary emotions. In the end, your emotions are powerful, but they are not always accurate. They provide signals, not instructions. And when you learn to create space between feeling and action, you take control. You move from reaction to intention. And that is where real power begins. Chapter 7. The Illusion of Control. You believe you are in control of your thoughts, that you choose what to think, that you decide what to do, that your actions come from conscious intention. But much of that control is an illusion, because many of your decisions happen before you are aware of them. Your brain processes information constantly. It evaluates situations, predicts outcomes, and prepares responses, all in the background. This is your subconscious. It works faster than your conscious mind, and often it acts first, then your conscious mind catches up. This is why you sometimes act before you think. You say something, then realize it. You make a decision, then explain it. You react, then justify it. Because the decision was already made. Your awareness came later. This is how subconscious decisions happen first. Your brain uses patterns. It relies on past experiences, habits, and learned responses. When a situation appears, it matches it with previous patterns and chooses a response quickly, without waiting for conscious analysis. This makes you efficient, but it also reduces control, because you are not always choosing in the moment. You are following patterns, and if those patterns are not helpful, they limit you. This is where the illusion begins. You believe you are making a conscious decision, but often you are just becoming aware of a decision already made. Your brain then creates a story, a logical explanation, to make the action feel intentional. For example, you avoid something. Then your mind says, "It's not the right time. I need more preparation." These explanations feel reasonable, but they may not be the real cause. The real cause may have been fear, or discomfort, or habit, but your brain does not present it that way. It creates a narrative that feels logical. This is how your brain creates stories after actions. It maintains the feeling of control. It makes you believe that you are fully in charge, even when you are following automatic patterns. This is not a problem in itself. It is how the brain works. The problem is lack of awareness. If you are not aware of this process, you remain controlled by it. You follow patterns without questioning them. You repeat behaviors without understanding them. And you believe you are choosing when you are actually reacting. This is why awareness is real control, not controlling every thought, but becoming aware of how they arise, not stopping every reaction, but noticing it before it continues. Awareness creates a gap between stimulus and response, between thought and action. In that gap, you have a choice. You can follow the pattern or change it. For example, you feel the urge to avoid something. Normally, you would follow it. But with awareness, you pause. You notice the urge. You question it. Why am I reacting this way? Is this helpful? And that moment changes everything, because now you are not acting automatically. You are choosing. This is where real control begins. Not in controlling your thoughts, but in choosing your response to them. You cannot stop your subconscious from generating thoughts, but you can decide what to do next. You can follow the pattern or interrupt it. You can react or respond. Over time, this changes your behavior. You become less automatic, less reactive, more intentional, because you are no longer driven only by patterns. You are guided by awareness. This does not mean you will control everything. That is not possible. But you will influence your direction. You will make better decisions. You will act more consciously. And that is real control. The illusion of control fades when you see how your mind works. And in that awareness, you gain something stronger. The ability to choose. And that changes everything. Chapter 8. Overthinking makes it worse. Thinking feels like control. When you think more, analyze more, and consider every possibility, it feels like you are solving the problem. It feels productive. But sometimes, thinking is not a solution. It is a trap. Overthinking gives you the illusion of progress while keeping you stuck. You go over the same ideas. You replay the same scenarios. You analyze every possible outcome. And instead of clarity, you get confusion. Because the more you think, the more possibilities you create. More options, more risks, more uncertainty. This is why thinking can become a problem. At a certain point, it stops helping and starts hurting. This leads to paralysis by analysis. You have too many options, too many variables, too many things to consider. And instead of choosing, you hesitate. You delay decisions. You wait for certainty. You look for the perfect answer. But that answer never comes. Because no amount of thinking can remove all uncertainty. There will always be something you don't know, something you can't predict. And if you wait for complete clarity, you will stay stuck. This is how overthinking blocks action. You become trapped in your head, you feel busy, but nothing changes. This is where mental loops begin. A mental loop is when your thoughts repeat. You think about something, then you think about it again and again, but nothing new is added. No new insight, no new information, just repetition. This creates mental exhaustion. You feel tired, drained, overwhelmed, because your mind is working constantly, without progress. And the longer you stay in this loop, the more confusing everything becomes. You start doubting yourself, questioning your decisions, overanalyzing simple things. And this reduces your confidence, because you are no longer trusting your judgment. You are questioning it constantly. This is why overthinking makes things worse. It doesn't bring clarity. It creates noise. It doesn't solve problems. It amplifies them. It turns small decisions into complex ones. And over time, this becomes a habit. Instead of acting, you think. Instead of deciding, you delay. Instead of moving forward, you stay in place. Breaking this pattern requires a shift, not more thinking, but action. Action breaks the illusion, because action brings reality. When you act, you move out of imagination, you stop guessing, you start experiencing, you see what actually happens, not what might happen. This reduces confusion, because reality is simpler than your thoughts. In your mind, there are endless possibilities. In reality, there is one situation, and that makes decision-making easier. Action also creates feedback. You learn from what happens. You adjust. You improve. This gives you clarity, not from thinking, but from doing. Even small action is enough. You don't need to solve everything. You just need to move. Because movement breaks the loop. It shifts your focus. It changes your state. And it reduces overthinking. Another important step is limiting thinking time. You don't need to analyze everything endlessly. Give yourself a boundary. Think for a certain time. Then decide. This forces action. It prevents unnecessary thinking. And it trains your brain to move forward. You also need to accept imperfection. Overthinking often comes from wanting the perfect decision, the perfect outcome, the perfect plan. But perfection is not possible, and chasing it creates delay. Instead, focus on progress. Make a decision. Take a step. Adjust as you go. Because clarity comes after action, not before. Over time, this changes your mindset. You stop relying on thinking for certainty. You rely on action for clarity. You become more decisive, more confident, more focused. Because you are no longer trapped in your head. You are engaged with reality. Your mind will always think. That will not change. But you don't need to follow every thought. You don't need to analyze everything. You don't need to solve every possibility. You need to act. Because thinking alone cannot move your life forward. But action can. And the moment you choose action over overthinking, you break the trap, and you regain control. Chapter 9. Your environment is programming you. You like to believe your thoughts are your own, that your opinions are independent, that your decisions come from your logic. But look closer. Your environment is constantly shaping you, silently, consistently, powerfully. Every input you consume, what you watch, who you talk to, what you scroll, acts like code being written into your mind. And over time, that code becomes your beliefs. This is the reality most people ignore. Your environment is programming you, not once, but every single day. The influence of media, people, and culture is stronger than you think. Media tells you what matters, what success looks like, what beauty looks like, what a good life looks like. And without realizing it, you absorb it. You start comparing, you start adjusting, you start chasing. People do the same. The conversations you have, the attitudes you're exposed to, the standards you see around you, they shape your expectations. If you're surrounded by people who complain, You normalize negativity. If you're surrounded by people who take action, you start thinking differently. Culture reinforces it all. It creates invisible rules. What's acceptable? What's normal? What's expected? And most of the time, you don't question it. You follow it. This is where social comparison becomes dangerous. You look at others, their success, their lifestyle, their progress, and you measure yourself against it, not based on your journey, but based on their highlight. This distorts your identity. You begin to think, I'm behind. I'm not doing enough. I'm not where I should be. Even when you are progressing, even when you are improving, because your reference point is no longer real. It is curated, filtered, unrealistic, and this creates pressure, unnecessary pressure. It makes you chase outcomes that may not even align with your goals. It shifts your focus from growth to comparison, from progress to validation. And over time, this weakens your confidence because you are no longer grounded in your own path. You are reacting to external signals. This is how external inputs shape internal beliefs. What you see repeatedly becomes familiar. What is familiar becomes accepted. What is accepted becomes belief. And belief drives behavior. If you constantly consume negativity, your thinking becomes negative. If you consume distraction, your focus weakens. If you consume growth, your mindset expands. This is not motivation. This is conditioning. Your brain adapts to what it sees most, and it does not filter automatically. It absorbs. This is why you must become intentional, because if you don't control your inputs, they will control your outcomes. The top 1% understand this deeply. They don't leave their environment to chance. They design it, they protect it, they optimize it, because they know environment is not background, it is influence, and influence shapes performance. So how do you take control? You start by auditing your inputs. Ask yourself, what am I consuming daily? Who am I around most? What kind of content fills my mind? Be honest, because awareness is the first step. Then you begin to remove what weakens you. Not everything, but enough to create space. Reduce noise, limit distraction, distance yourself from constant negativity, not out of avoidance, but out of intention. You are protecting your focus. Next, you upgrade your environment. You introduce better inputs, content that challenges you, people who push you, ideas that expand your thinking, because your environment should elevate you, not drain you. Even small changes matter. What you listen to, what you watch, what you read. These are daily signals, and daily signals create long-term patterns. Another powerful step is designing a high-performance environment. Make it easier to focus, simplify your space, reduce friction, remove unnecessary distractions. Your environment should support your goals, not fight against them. Create cues, visual reminders of what matters, because your surroundings should guide your behavior, not distract it. And finally, protect your identity. Stop comparing your path to others. Focus on your progress, your growth, your direction, because your life is not a competition. It is a construction. You are building something, and that requires clarity, not comparison. In the end, your environment is shaping you whether you realize it or not. So the question is not, am I being influenced? The question is, am I choosing the right influence? Because when you control your environment, you control your inputs. When you control your inputs, you shape your beliefs. And when you shape your beliefs, you shape your life. This is how you move from being programmed to becoming the programmer. Chapter 10. Wake up and take control. There comes a moment when everything becomes clear. A moment when you realize that most of your life has been running on autopilot. The thoughts you believed, the fears you followed, the habits you repeated. You didn't choose all of them consciously. They were programmed, conditioned, repeated until they felt like you. But here is the truth. You are not your automatic thoughts. You are the one who can observe them. And in that realization, everything changes. This is where waking up begins. Not physically, but mentally. You stop moving through life unconsciously. You start seeing the patterns, the triggers, the reactions, the loops, and once you see them, you can no longer ignore them, because awareness is power. It creates a gap, a space between what happens and how you respond. This is the most important shift. Awareness, pause, choice. First, awareness. You notice the thought, the impulse, the reaction rising. Instead of immediately acting, you see it. You recognize this is a pattern. That alone changes everything, because before awareness, everything is automatic. After awareness, everything becomes optional. Then comes the pause. This is where control begins. You don't react instantly. You don't follow the first impulse. You give yourself a moment, a breath, a second of space, and in that space something powerful happens. Your mind slows down, your emotions settle, your thinking becomes clearer. That pause is small, but it separates reaction from intention. And then comes the choice. You decide what to do next, not based on fear, not based on habit, but based on awareness. You choose your response. You choose your action. You choose your direction. This is what real control looks like. Not controlling every thought, but choosing what to do with them. Because thoughts will always come. Fear will always appear. Doubt will always exist. But they don't have to control you, unless you let them. Another critical step is questioning every automatic thought. Most people never question their thinking. They accept it. They believe it. They follow it. But now you are different. You ask, is this thought true? Is it helpful? Is it based on reality or fear? These questions break the illusion. They expose patterns. They reduce the power of negative thinking. Because once a thought is questioned, it loses its authority. You stop treating it as truth. You start seeing it as a possibility, and that gives you freedom. You are no longer trapped inside your mind. You are observing it from a distance, with clarity, and that clarity changes how you act. This leads to the next transformation, replacing reaction with intention. Before you reacted, quickly, automatically, without thinking. Now you respond, slowly, deliberately, with purpose. Instead of reacting with anger, you pause. Instead of avoiding fear, you face it. Instead of overthinking, you act. This is not easy. It requires effort. It requires discipline. But it changes your life. Because your actions are no longer controlled by emotion. They are guided by intention. And intention creates direction. Another powerful shift is building a conscious, disciplined mind. Discipline is not punishment. It is freedom. It is the ability to act even when you don't feel like it, to stay focused when distractions appear, to move forward despite uncertainty. But discipline starts in the mind. It starts with awareness, with choosing your thoughts, with guiding your actions. Each time you choose intentionally, you strengthen your mind. Each time you resist automatic patterns, you gain control. Each time you act with purpose, you build identity. Over time, this becomes who you are. You are no longer reactive. You are intentional. You are no longer controlled by patterns. You are creating them. This is how transformation happens, not in one big moment, but in small, repeated choices. Every day, every situation, every decision. You wake up, not just once, but continuously. You become aware again and again. You pause again and again. You choose again and again. And with each repetition, you become stronger, more focused, more in control. Because now, you understand something most people never realize. Your mind is a tool, not a master. And you are the one who decides how it is used. So wake up. See the patterns. Break the loops. Take control. Because your life is not determined by your thoughts. It is determined by your choices. And now, you are finally choosing consciously. Conclusion. Your mind is powerful. It can create ideas, solve problems, and shape your entire reality. But it is not always truthful. It produces thoughts based on patterns, emotions, and past experiences, not always on facts. And if you believe every thought without question, you give your mind control over your life. But here is the shift. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of them. You are the one who notices them, questions them, and decides what to do next. And in that separation lies your power. Because awareness creates real freedom. The moment you become aware of your thinking, you are no longer trapped inside it. You can pause, you can choose, you can act differently. And that changes everything. You don't need to control every thought. You need to control your response. Small mental shifts, like questioning a negative thought, pausing before reacting, or choosing action over fear, may seem simple. But over time, they create massive change. They reshape your habits. They strengthen your mindset. They transform your life, because your life is not built on one big decision. It is built on many small, conscious choices. So wake up, see how your mind works, stop blindly following every thought, and start choosing your actions with awareness. Because if you don't take control of your mind, it will continue to control you. Call to action. What thought has been lying to you? Take a moment and really think about it. There's probably a belief, a fear, or a doubt that has been holding you back without you even realizing it. Share it in the comments. Your honesty might help someone else wake up too. If you know someone who feels stuck in their own mind, send this audiobook to them. Sometimes one powerful idea is enough to break years of overthinking. And if you want more deep, eye-opening mindset audiobooks like this, subscribe to MindForge Audiobooks and stay connected. Because real change doesn't come from ignoring your thoughts. It comes from understanding them. Your mind can lie to you, but awareness reveals the truth.